Hi, welcome to the small shed. This week on the Cyclekart I want to get the fuel system sorted. See you in a minute. Right, so it's time to have a look at fuel, which is one of the essential components I need to get this thing running. It shouldn't be a big job because I don't think I'm going to deviate too far away from the original. The Lifan tank that came with the cart sat with those two lugs in these brackets here and here, and its only real complication is that they're at an angle to the base of the tank. Now obviously I can't put them there because the gearbox is in the way. And for a while I was contemplating getting a new small tank and putting up here and mounting in some way up there, and this has sort of been buzzing around in my head for a week or two, and then I realised that there's probably no reason why I can't use the original tank if I adapted it a bit. As I say, the complication is those studs being at an angle, but if I could get that to mount somewhere there, it would still be within the shape of the rear cowling fairly far forward, so we shouldn't have a problem with it fitting. Plenty of room there, and it's reasonably far away from the engine, so there shouldn't be any problem with heat affecting the fuel or anything like that. So if I could make a bracket to fit that up there, that may well be the answer. So I'm going to have a quick look, start off first of all with my collection of old saw table aluminium bits, brackets, and see if I can find something that might do me. One of these profiles might do me in some way, shape or form. As I say, the biggest complication is this angle on it, but we'll see what we can find and then have a look, maybe come back when we've had a think about it. Now I've got a profile there that may well do the job, because if I squeeze and bend that section round until those 2 points just about touch, I think I'll have enough angle on it. I can drill through that part there for the actual tank fixings. That'll give me a fairly strong support there, and then that should bolt to the top of those posts, I think. We'll just have a look anyway and have a go. Now that's chopped it and drilled it and bent it to shape. It will need a bit of work doing to get those nuts to be able to do up properly, because there's nowhere for them to tighten down to at the moment, but we can relieve some of that end piece that just sticks up a bit. That could be the angle, that if I just now can bolt that flat on the top of those posts, that gives me the tank at pretty much the right angle. If it slopes down slightly at the back, it's no great problem because the outlet is down there anyway, so it'll naturally drain towards the lowest point on the tank. Then all I would need is to run a hose from there down to the carburettor, which is a slightly longer hose I've got to sort out. And I'm a bit worried that with a couple of litres of fuel in, there's quite a bit of leverage on that, on a joint that is essentially a bend in a piece of aluminium. So I could do with using that last fixing point on the back of the tank and take it down to find a suitable point on the engine, of which I can't actually find anything much at the moment. I may have to come back over here somewhere where there's a couple of points. I think that's probably for fixing a throttle cable. No, I don't know. No, there's something there that might well do. But let me have a look at that and we'll see if we can find something. It's got the bracket fitted on the bottom. I had to move it back a bit. This is the second attempt because the first one I couldn't do the bolts up underneath or the bolts on there, so I could only do one half of the thing up. That seems to be okay now. Just tighten that up. I've only got one of the bolts at the moment. I've run out of these bolts, but come back to that one when we find another one. Yeah, but as I suspected, there's a degree of vibration in that at the moment that's not going to be acceptable, particularly when it's full of fuel, so we need to get something in there then just to stay that. I think I'll probably be taking it from there up to there. We'll find a piece of suitable material. Right, that's got to stay mounted on there. That's stiffened the whole thing up tremendously, so I'm happy with that. Need a coat of paint at some point, but we'll worry about that later. And of course I've got to get that other screw in the bracket in the top. But that's one more thing done. I've got to trace now where that pipe comes out of the carburettor. I'm not going to mess around with swapping carburettors at the moment. The ultimate aim is to get a Mikuni, because I think I'm going to run into trouble with this one with the corner of the cart, of the bodywork. But at the moment let's get it running on its original tank and its original carb, and I can worry about other things later on. That needs to connect up to there, so I need new length of fuel line. We'll go and get that on order, I think. Now, having got the tank sort of fitted so that we've got a fuel system installed, there's one more thing that I've been thinking about for a while that I'm not sure, or I wasn't sure about, but I think is sensible, and that is to keep the fuel away from me in the event of any sort of a problem, principally fire. But what I think I'd like to do is to put a firewall in between me and the engine. So I'm just going to cut some dye bond to fill in the back of this. It might only give me, 15 or 20 seconds or more longer than it would do without, but I think that's long enough to get out of the thing if there is a problem. It's got the firewall back in now with dye bond on the back of it. There's a very small opening through there where the brake caliper is, but I'll plate that over from the other side when we come to do the trimming out on the cockpit. But that's all ready now, just to basically prepare it and paint. So I've ordered the fuel hose, and I've also ordered some P-clips to run through there. So that should just about tie up all the fuel system all together then. Now I've just replaced the original petrol pipe off the carburetor because it wasn't quite long enough to reach other than to the bottom of the old tank there. So I'm just putting the clips back on that. I was going to put a fuel filter in the line, but I think I'll wait until we come to looking at whether I change this carburetor out altogether for a Mikuni. I don't think a bit of dirty petrol, which I'm not intending to put any in anyway, but I don't think it'll be a major hiccup. But I might as well reuse the original clips. And I've got them. So I'll put those on. So that's got the fuel system there, and again I've put a fuel tap in and there's already one down here. But similarly, when we come to put the Mikuni in, I'm intending that obviously that won't have that system in there. So we'll need the tap for that. But that gives me an on-off on the fuel tap. Just tighten that up. Put it loose. I'll just leave that one open all the while, and then it does mean I can take the tank off more easily, because having the tap down there you'd have to disconnect that whole system to get the fuel tank off, whereas now I can turn it off there, undo that, undo the clip there, and the whole thing will lift off. So it may be a bit belt and braces, but in this instance I think it'll work. Right, so that's got the tank in with the tap straight down into the carburetor, all mounted and finished. I will have to mess around with this when we get a different carburetor on, but for the purposes of getting this thing up and running, that's fine. I've left it unpainted. I assume this is stove enamelled, purely and simply because if I paint it and splash petrol on it, it'll just rip the paint off it anyway. So I'm leaving it as it is as a finish. So I think that just about got the fuel system tied up. Right, that's got the tank in, along with the tap for future use if I swap the carburetor, and hopefully now we're getting pretty close to getting the engine started. So hope the video was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next week when we'll be doing something different on the Cyclekart. I'll see you then. Bye!